Welcome to the Pandemonium Witches podcast, where the ADHD has just a touch of autism, where the true crime is as scary as the hauntings and unsolved cases. But the hosts never stay on topic for long. I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Em.
And I'm Meg.
Keep your arms, legs, and other extremities in the vehicle at all times, and enjoy the show. Oh, good morning.
Good mornings.
How was your October? Long?
Anxiety filled.
Right.
And anxiety, PTSD, and all kinds of other shit.
Right.
Because the 10th was 6-year anniversary for Hurricane Michael, and then Milton and Helene coming through, and I was living on my anxiety meds the whole time.
Well, I mean, I don't blame you because it
was just very traumatic.
Right. It's super traumatic.
But speaking of hurricanes, we're going to talk about a hurricane today.
Previously on the Pandemonium Witches, published on October 18th, episode 47, Texas. Guests hear other phantom children running and laughing throughout the hotel, playing the piano in the lobby, or running amok in the halls. Amok.
Yeah, it's because the hotel was one of the few buildings left standing, and so they were using it to as a site for the bodies. I've deep dived that hurricane, and it's a lot of things should have been done leading up to it even reaching Galveston, and they weren't because some guy had his panties in a wad and didn't want to listen to the Cubans and the people in the islands that were broadcasting the information to the U.S.
Right. Like, hey, you should probably do this. And he's like, nah, I'm good.
He's like, just straight up ignoring it. It's like, oh yeah, no, this isn't going to be, that bad of a storm. It's just, it's just a small storm. Meanwhile, other meteorologists are like, no, this is going to be bad.
Right.
And it makes me so angry. And there's no reason for me to be this angry at a dead person.
Well, yeah! Sorry, no, that was way too much excitement. I apologize. I'm sorry. I love weather.
Yes, I love Pudge the fish.
Okay.
He controls the weather.
Hold on.
I need to give him a peanut butter sandwich here soon, so that way he can stop this bullshit.
Hold on. The whole thing from Pudge the fish. Hold on. It's sandwich day. Every Thursday I take Pudge the fish a peanut butter sandwich.
Yes.
Lilo, why are you wet? It's sandwich day. Every Thursday I take Pudge the fish a peanut butter sandwich. Pudge is a fish? And today we were out of peanut butter. So I asked my sister what to give him. And she said a tuna sandwich. I can't give Pudge tuna. Do you know?
Do you know what tuna is?
It's fish! If I give Pudge tuna, I'd be an abomination. I'm late because I had to go to the store to get peanut butter because all we have is stinking tuna. Lilo, why is this important?
Pudge controls the weather.
Ta-da! I love Lilo and Stitch. Josh has a Stitch shirt that has Stitch and Angel on it. And originally for our wedding, instead of getting Gomez and Morticia, I wanted to get Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
Because he'd be taking photos while I'm beating the shit out of somebody. Because if you come after my man, I'm sorry, I'm going to be biting off my nails.
Right.
Pardon me while you kiss the sky, motherfucker.
Exactly.
But today we're talking about hurricanes.
Yes. One in particular. It happened in the 1900s.
Oh.
So it's been a chunk of time.
So so hurricanes, we're discussing today's hurricane because it's nature's serial killer. If I'm correct.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it's she. I call it she. lot of people. Like,
Like, how many are we talking? More than
so roughly the fatalities between 6 and 12,000.
Holy fuck! So 6 people or 6,000 to 12,000?
6,000 to 12,000.
Jesus Christmas!
Yeah, it's our serial killer of the day.
I would
Because
hate to have a serial killer of the day, to be honest.
oh, me too. I mean, unfortunately, there's enough that we could honestly do serial killer of the day. Unfortunately.
I know, and we do have a request for a serial killer.
Okay.
So I've been asked if we can do Jack the Ripper.
Oh boy.
So there are quite a few. Would you like to cover Jack the Ripper? There are quite a few people who have requested. So
okay. Okay, so the Great Galveston Hurricane, is also known, the Galveston Flood, known regionally as the Great Storm of the Night of 1900, or the 1900 storm. It was the strongest storm of the 1900 Atlantic hurricane season.
well then,
Yeah, like it was the whole reason why we have the rating season, like the scale that we have now,
is because of this particular.
yes, because of this hurricane. So she went through basically the Caribbean to into the Gulf, and went up to Texas. Let me scroll down to my photo of her. Sorry, there's 12 pages. So basically,
we have quite a bit today then.
yes. So like the last page is just, or the last 2 pages are just photos. So basically she went across the Dominican Republic and Haiti, through Cuba, through the Gulf, Texas, Oklahoma, up to Iowa, and then went across Michigan and into Canada, and was last seen. Parts of her were hitting Iceland. So she did.
She got around. She was the slut.
Like she hit New York, Ohio. She hit a lot of area. So it is still considered the deadliest storm in U.S. history and the 4th deadliest Atlanta hurricane as of 2024.
Good God. We've had a lot.
Yeah, it's because the fatalities were between 6,000 and 12,000. And that's just their estimation because so many bodies were not found from Galveston. There were registered 15 deaths in Ohio, 2 deaths in Illinois, 2 deaths in New York, 1 death in Massachusetts, 1 death in Missouri, and between 52 and 232 deaths in Canada, which is mostly due to sunken vessels near Newfoundland and the French territory of St. Pierre.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and because the northern states aren't prepared for hurricanes, there was a lot of destruction as well.
Right.
It was estimated 1.25 billion, which was 2023 US dollar amount, in damages. 35.4 million in 1900 US money.
In what year?
1900.
Okay.
So it was 35.4 million in 1900, but in 2023 the estimation was 1.25 billion.
Holy fuck.
Yeah,
that's like, a lot of money. Damage.
And on today's scale, she was estimated to be a Cat 4.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So majority of the deaths occurred near or in Galveston, which is why it was titled the Galveston Hurricane.
Right.
The storm surge inundated the coastline and the island with 8 to 12 feet 2.4 to 3.7 meters of water. That is a huge storm surge.
Right.
About 7,000 buildings in Galveston were destroyed. 3,636 homes destroyed. Every single building in Galveston suffered some degree and type of damage.
Holy shit.
Because they were either destroyed or suffered some kind of damage. It left about 10,000 people homeless out of a population of less than 38,000. And that 10,000 people were the ones that survived.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So after this hurricane, 3 engineers designed and oversaw plans to raise the shoreline by 17 feet, 5.2 meters, and put up a 10-mile, 16-kilometer seawall, which exists to this day.
Right.
They basically had to raise the city because otherwise it was going to just continually get destroyed. Because they built it on a sandbar, guys.
Right.
Yeah, on a sandbar, you're gonna. It is not. It is not a good idea.
Right.
So that's basically the too long didn't read.
Right.
So August 27th was when it first got spotted. A ship east of the Windward Islands first spotted the tropical cyclone. It was moving steadily west to northwestward and entered the northeastern Caribbean on August 30th. It made landfall in the Dominican Republic as a weak tropical storm September 2nd.
Oh.
It weakened slightly while crossing the Hispaniola before re-emerging into the Caribbean Sea, where it gained strength again.
Mm-hmm.
All of this was on September 2nd. September 3rd, it struck modern-day Santiago de Cuba province and then drifted slowly along the southern coast of Cuba, taking its time. It took 3 days to do that.
Jesus.
September 3rd, it reached the Gulf of Mexico and strengthened into a hurricane. It peaked as a Cat 4 hurricane with max sustained winds of 145 miles per hour, which is 235 kilometers per hour.
That's
on
fast.
September 8th.
Mm-hmm.
So within 2 days, it jumped into a Cat 4.
And then
weakened. Yeah.
That's like Cat 4 and Cat 5 are the normal catastrophic.
The way they describe Cat 5s is it doesn't get made into a Cat 5 until after
landfall.
Well, no, afterwards, because Hurricane Michael didn't get declared as a Cat 5 until after they've reviewed the evidence that they could gather of the wind, the surge, all the documentation, and then they declared it months later as a Category 5,
right,
which is basically what they declare as a act of God, because at that point, all you can do is hope and pray that you're going to survive.
Right.
So what they did was said it was an upper Category 4 and basically told us to shelter in place and hopefully they would see us post-storm.
Right.
That was what our local meteorologist said before we started losing power. The power, cell phone signal, because cell phone towers went.
Right.
Like there were cell phone towers that were literally, the tips were curled around and touching the ground. It was horrific. And that's with all of the hurricane stuff, like the hurricane measures and everything, since all of these storms from the 1900s, upwards, because each time a bad hurricane comes through, the building codes change because they're like, okay, what can we do to prevent this much damage in the future? Right. So the fact that we had all this damage since then, that's a topic for another day, guys. Anyways, back to 1900.
Yes.
So it peaked as a Category 4 on September 8th. It then weakened quickly while moving inland and falling into a tropical storm intensity late on September 9th. turning east northeastward on September 11th and became a extratropical, also called mid-lateral cyclones or wave cyclones. This is as it's going across the states.
Okay.
This is also basically shortened version of all the information I'm going to go into.
Okay.
Uh, the the system strengthened while accelerating across the Midwest, New England area and eastern Canada before reaching the Gulf of St. Lawrence on September 13th. So literally, she was fast moving.
Right.
Later on the 13th, after striking Newfoundland, it entered the far North Atlantic Ocean and weakened again. The remains of her were last observed near Iceland on September 15th. So literally, it traveled extremely fast, going from when she was first spotted and where she ended.
Right.
And obviously, destruction followed the storm the whole entire way because she was first spotted August 27th. She ended September 15th. That's like what, 2 weeks?
Right.
Like she did all this destruction in a 2-week span. And it just kind of was like, holy shit. Like, because like I know about, Galveston Hurricane because of the destruction she caused for Galveston into Texas. But I had no clue until I was researching this just how far she went in
Right.
such a short amount of time.
Because we
Until I
talked
was
about
doing research for this.
right. We talked about it on the Texas episode.
Yeah, we just kind of briefly mentioned it.
Right.
But I had no clue until researching this that she did this huge path.
Right.
Like I knew like she, hit the islands and then hit Texas, but usually what happens after that is it breaks down and
Right. It dissipates.
It dissipates. It breaks down, falls apart. I had no clue that she continued to go all the way up through Canada to Iceland.
Right.
Which it just blew my mind. Because none of those places were made to deal with hurricane strength stuff that far inland.
Right. And I mean like a lot of places like okay, for instance, Virginia's on the coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I lived, it was particularly close to the water, but they were all like, "Oh, a hurricane's coming. You got to prepare for it." Like we had minimal.
It was very random, like
right. It was minimal
like you guys
flooding.
had hurricane grade
right
stuff, but not like Florida and along the Gulf Coast.
Right. It wasn't like when we had what was it last year? We had that hurricane come through because it was storm season. It was around this time, and I remember you were like, "Oh, are you prepping for the hurricane?" And I was like, "No." Because there's no need
and
to
I'm
prep.
like, what do you mean?
Because I had soups and everything. Like, I had everything prepped. Yeah. All I needed to do was... Sorry, I hit the microphone.
That's fine.
Turn the grill on outside. We had a grill downstairs. It was a charcoal grill, right? But it was we could make everything on that grill that we had upstairs. So I had, like, Spam and everything like that. I was not happy that my power was out for 2 days, but... It was fine because all we had was flooding. We didn't have like a ton of stuff. And everybody in that area was like, "Oh my God, you have to be prepared because what happened in Florida?" I was like, what happened in Florida was a decimation. That was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
But what happened to us was just minute flooding, and there were some houses on the beach that got...
It was just like more, rain and some storm surge, and that was it.
Right. They got some sand and some water, but I mean, it was mainly flooding. And like... two of my patients that lived on the coast, I'm sorry, I'm completely interrupted, but two of my patients that lived on the coast, their front lobby, their front porch, because the porch, the back of the house was the front of the house, and the front of the house was the back of the house. And their quote unquote front porch covered in sand, and their windows were broken and a bunch of other shit. Meanwhile, the next door neighbors, unscathed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
so random.
Good God. Like, I don't... Does that make sense? Like, I don't understand how... Which is why I was so excited you were going to do this, because I was like, oh my God, I get to figure out how things happen.
Like, and so it's kind of like with tornadoes. You have no clue what path it's going to take. And like what kind of damage, because um my house roof was taken off.
Mm-hmm.
House literally across the street only had busted windows
Mm-hmm.
on their top floor because it was
Right.
a two-story. Nothing wrong.
Nothing.
Um, house right next to it, completely devastated. Roof ripped off, walls caved in.
Right.
House on the other side of it, completely fine. And so it's like, it's so random. And the eye of Michael traveled down my road because I'm across the bay from the Air Force Base, which
Right.
is right next to Mexico Beach. So, like, it's so random on like what gets hit and what doesn't.
Right.
Whereas, like, with hurricanes, it's the whole area will get devastated.
Right.
Whereas, up in the Appalachians and Tennessee and that area, it's all the flooding
Right.
is what did all their devastation.
Right. Which they're still like taking donations and everything like
Oh
that.
yes,
And
100%, guys.
do not donate to the Red Cross or FEMA. Was it
Oh,
FEMA?
fuck FEMA.
Um.
Fuck FEMA. That is a topic for
Oh
a whole
no, I hate
day.
FEMA for what happened in Santa Rosa.
Oh, I hate FEMA because they literally told my parents, because we had insurance on the house, even though the house was a complete loss, they would not help us.
I mean, we had, so FEMA was telling us we couldn't set up the dental tents, and it was us and like four other doctors and five other physicians, and we set up this giant tent,
Right.
and we were doing
Giving out toothbrushes, toothpaste, you
dental
know,
care, emergency dental care for people who needed
right?
it. And we did stuff out in the field with like
Yeah,
only regular local anesthetic. We were like, we can't put you
right,
under. We can give, shots and stuff like that, but we need information on you and stuff like that. And I
right. We
remember,
can give you like care up to a certain point to get you to where
right,
you're not in pain or as much pain until you can get to someplace to get the better procedure.
right. And it's one of those things where I was really upset because FEMA was like, you can't set up here, everything like that. I'm like, we're doing it for free.
Right,
You can't tell us we can't. And then they were like, yeah, we can. And I was like, actually, you can't. We have a permit from the city that we do it once a month. And
right.
they were like, what? Yeah, we got a permit. I think it was like a year or two
Right.
before because the city was like, you have to have a permit that states that you'll do it once a month for like homeless
Yeah.
people or in campus. And we did that once a month, one Saturday a month.
And everybody was homeless at that point.
And I
Like,
was
it didn't
like,
matter.
what are you talking about? We're doing exactly what we said we were going to do. Fuck you, FEMA.
Right. And it just, because we were so sure that FEMA would give us some kind of help because the house was a total loss. Like, we had a whole side missing. The roof was just completely, it was basically scalped off. It was not salvageable. It was not livable. And FEMA was like, nope, because you make X amount
Mm-hmm.
and you have the house fully insured,
Right.
we can't help you. We're not going to help you. And I'm still bitter about it to this day, 6 years later, because
Right.
we were homeless at
Right.
this point. Dad was living in the backyard in a tent just to make sure nobody was coming through and trying to steal what little we had left.
Right.
While Mom and I were able to move into Mimi's house.
Mm-hmm.
But if we hadn't have had that,
Right.
we would have been homeless.
I mean, luckily for me, with my fire situation, I was able to move back into my old apartments
Yeah.
because she hadn't rented it out yet. And she's like, I'm really glad you reached out to me, but there were a lot of people who had to deal with the price gouging.
Oh, yeah. That was the same here. Like, the prices tripled
Right.
overnight.
I
And it's still that same way today. Like a 1 bedroom, 1 bath is $1,400
it's astronomical, yeah.
without utilities.
Mine without utilities, I had to pay utilities too. It was 2,300 a month.
Yeah.
And I was working that job and doing the tutoring and oh god.
You were working like 3 different
I was working
jobs
3 different
just to
jobs.
make
Yeah.
rent.
Which is, it's weird now not to be working, even though but I mean, FEMA, if I wouldn't have gotten my apartment back, I don't think I would have had a place to stay.
Oh, 100%.
Because I made too much money.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, how is this even accurate? Like,
Right.
do you not see the price of how much my apartment was? And it was, a tiny little hobunk thing. But anyways, I can literally
Yeah.
talk about
Like I
that for
had
hours.
friends who, lost that, their places were
Gone.
gone, in unlivable because of the mold.
Right.
Just because of the wind and the water damage,
Mhm.
and they were living out of their cars for months.
Oh, yeah, I've done that.
Oh yeah. My cousin, thankfully, like her apartment was unsalvageable
Right.
just because of the wind and water damage. And she was working as a dispatcher for a local police department.
Yeah.
And she was working like all kinds of overtime and hours, and she was the one that was at the police department during the hurricane.
Right.
She was writing it out there, and thankfully her brother had a spare room, but granted that meant moving to Texas, and he didn't give her a choice. He said, "You have no place to live. You are coming back with me." And
Right.
so he loaded up what was salvageable in the back of his Forerunner
And took what they
that
could
he
and
had
left.
driven over, and he had brought a trailer over with him and loaded up what was salvageable and took her back home with her
Yeah.
because her car was destroyed. The back window got busted sitting in the police station parking lot and just got flooded with the water. And so it was a total loss. And so
Yeah.
she ended up having to get a new vehicle, but he's like, "You're not staying in this town."
Yeah. I mean,
He's like,
luckily,
"There is nothing here for you besides," granted, like,
right.
she still had us, cousin and aunt and grandmother, but her job, you know, they were running on generators, and he's like, "Put in your 2 weeks, but when I leave, you're coming with me."
Right.
And she did, and he got her, a job. She ended up like staying with them for like, I think like 2 years,
Hmm.
just so that way she could get back on her feet. She could pay off all her debts because he didn't charge her rent. Get up,
Right.
and pay off her debts and everything, and ended up, getting her a job at
Hmm.
his company, and she ended up like getting her a place, and she loves it there.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like they had a good relationship before this, but it's really
gotten better.
strengthened their, yeah,
Yeah.
it's 100%. It's really strengthened their relationship, and I love it for her because she's finally in a um healthy
Healthy spot.
environment,
Yeah.
and she needed to get away from Panama City
I mean,
because she had, a couple, she had a bad ex that, she literally had a restraining order against.
right.
I think she still does. And he was still, you know, she was still terrified that, to like go out by herself or like
Right.
not have somebody know her location at all times. And so it was better for her to completely leave.
Well, and I mean, like, after the fire here, I moved to Virginia.
Yeah.
Not here, but, California.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, even though I'm no longer friends with her, I
Mhm.
still very much appreciate Brianna for getting me out of that really toxic situation I had.
Oh yeah.
Because if I
It gave you the
wouldn't,
push.
right, if I wouldn't have been able to, you know, we had a written agreement that I wouldn't pay rent for the first 2 years.
Right, to get on your feet and get everything
Right.
situated.
And I was able to pay off a good chunk of my hospital debt, which I had, God, I want to say I had 15 left. And
Yeah.
when I left her, I had, God, I want to say maybe 1,000 left. And I paid that off.
Right.
I paid that off. And, no matter what happened between me and her, like, I wish her well. And, I hope she's doing well in life. I really appreciated what she gave me because it was,
Yeah. She helped you out in a time that you needed it the most.
right. It was one of those things where family wouldn't help me.
Right, because they had their own things going on and
Right. And it's fine. They were
Yeah.
dealing with what they were dealing with. I get it. We're not even going to get started on my brother and that mess.
That's a whole nother topic.
That is a whole nother topic. But I mean, like, when it comes to these natural disasters and everything like that, everybody thinks it's not that big. It is a big deal. Like,
Oh yeah. 100%.
I can't.
And you can't just do the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps
Right.
in this kind of situation, in this sort of devastation.
When you personally are going through this shit, I cannot freak out. I have to be the calm one.
Right.
You and Sissy get to freak out. You and Sissy
yes,
get to have
100%.
your anxiety attacks. And then once you guys are done, then I get to have my little pity party.
Right.
And I get to freak out because, oh my God, the shit you guys have gone through in the last couple of weeks alone.
Oh God, it's so. It's just been a year.
We need a vacation, a puddle of puppies, and 10 shots of tequila.
Something like that. All right, let's get back on topic.
We've veered like hurricanes.
We veered off pretty far.
Like hurricanes, we have veered off pretty far. Let's get back on task.
Okay, back to Galveston.
Yes.
So backstory on Galveston. So Galveston was formally founded in 1839.
Yep.
And had weathered tons of storms before this hurricane, all of which the city had survived with ease, which was probably because it wasn't a direct hit.
Probably more than likely. But I mean, if people want to actually go back on the history of Galveston, I do deep dive on that on Texas. I think for 26 minutes? Something like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
So like, this is just kind of the synopsis of Galveston.
Right.
Because if I wanted to just deep dive on Galveston, we'd be here all
fucking day, dude.
So in 1900, the population was 37,788 people.
Very nice.
It was the fourth largest municipality in terms of population in the state of Texas.
Okay.
Fourth largest. It had many ornate business buildings in a downtown section called the Strand, which still stands today. It is a National Historical Landmark, and it's also called the Strand Historic District.
Yep.
It's really pretty. Gorgeous buildings.
So pretty.
The ones that survived the hurricane actually have a plaque on them now that say, basically this, pretty much like this building survived the 1900 hurricane, which is kind of cool. It was one of the busiest ports in the nation, and as with most things, complacency becomes the norm, especially when the city had weathered storms easily in the past.
Right.
It unfortunately led to their downfall because it happens.
Right.
It didn't help that the local Weather Bureau's office director, Isaac Klein, wrote in a 1891 article in the Galveston Daily News that it would be impossible for a hurricane of significant strength to strike Galveston Island.
Fuck him.
And of course, Mother Nature went, bet, I'm gonna call you bluff.
Fuck you and the horse you rode in on too.
Basically. He is a reoccurring person in my notes. So, because he was the local meteorologist.
Right.
So Indianola and Matagorda Bay in Texas was hit by a pretty bad hurricane in 1875. And then a second hurricane in 1886. So 11 years later, got hit again.
Right. Like, not
Which
just once,
caused,
but twice, right?
yes, right. So that caused the majority of the residents to leave and move elsewhere.
Which is it's a good idea to not.
Right, but because it between the two hurricanes, it caused so much damage that the majority of the residents were like, all right, we're just going to leave.
Peace!
Basically, deuces, we out. So many of the Galveston residents saw the destruction of Indianola as a lesson about the threats of hurricanes. They're like, this is a lesson.
Right.
They wanted to build a seawall to protect the town because they're like, Galveston sits kind of low. Like, we need something to protect us.
Right.
Because it was built on a low, flat island, which was a little more than a large sandbar along the Gulf Coast.
I know you talked about it on the Texas episode about, so I'm not one to know a lot about sandbars. Sandbars are kind of like the things that the waves hit, right?
Yeah. So
okay.
Basically, so where I live, we have two sandbars that are always covered with water. Basically, you had the first sandbar, and so up to the first sandbar, it's,
yeah,
I'm like 5'7", so it, can get up to
pretty tall,
hip waist level up
right.
to, the first sandbar. Between this first sandbar and second sandbar, it's deeper. And then past that second sandbar, it is deep. It is several feet deep.
Right.
Like, there is no touching it. Past the second sandbar is when you start encountering boats and, jet skis, and because that's where it's deeper, where they can't hit.
Oh,
it's also where the bigger fish are.
Oh, so Meg, if you're listening, that's where the sharks are.
Yes.
Also, send your shark facts to Meg.
However, some, because of storms, they will build up some of the sandbars and create dunes and create islands.
Right.
Sometimes they are called barrier islands because the surges and everything have created these islands as a barrier.
Okay.
Because of they've built up over time.
Right.
So a bunch of residents were wanting to build a seawall to protect the island. The city government and majority of the population dismiss these residents' concerns. Isaac Klein, the dude challenging Mother Nature.
Right, the guy that said, fuck you, Mother Nature.
Yeah, basically had argued in his 1891 article that a seawall was not needed due to his idiotic belief that a strong hurricane wouldn't strike the island, and he was completely wrong.
I'm sorry. I call bullshit.
Right. So as a result, the wall was not built, and further developments on the island increased the vulnerability. How? They cut down the sand dunes like idiots to fill in low spots in the city.
That's where they... Right, that's...
Which removed the little barriers that were left.
Bro!
Because the sand dunes protect. They catch the surge. They catch the the sand that's getting pushed up with the storm surge. They catch all of that.
Right.
And so you remove that and you're fucked. That's why sand dunes are so important, along with the sea oats and the dune grass that live on them, because it keeps the sand dunes in place.
Right.
That's why in Florida, the sea oats and the dune grass are protected, and so you're not supposed to go into the dunes.
Mm-hmm.
Also because of sand spurs, which is a totally another thing, and those are asshole plants. Sand spurs are little pokey balls that's
oh no,
sticking your shoes. They hurt if you step on them. And then if you happen to walk into an area that doesn't have them, they will drop little seeds and then You cannot get rid of them once they have taken root. You have to burn the area.
Ugh.
You have to burn it and then take what's left and take it away, like throw it away, and redeposit more dirt, like better uninhabited dirt and grass, because that's the only way to get rid of it, because it takes hold.
That is disgusting, and I hate it.
I hate sand spurs. Or they are the bane of my existence.
Sounds
right,
like
anyways, it. On September 4th, the Weather Bureau, which eventually became the National Hurricane or the National Weather Service. So throughout my notes, it's referred to as the Weather Bureau because that's what it was called then.
Okay.
So they have a Galveston office. They started receiving warnings from the central office in DC that a tropical disturbance had moved northward over Cuba. Okay, cool. During this time frame, the main office discouraged the use of terms like hurricane or tornado to avoid panicking the residents in the path of any storm event.
Why?
Because they didn't want to panic the people when there is a fucking devastating item coming at them.
My God. They're a bunch of dumbasses.
White men, then.
White men? No.
So the U.S. forecasters believed that the storm had begun a northward curve into Florida and would eventually make its way out into the Atlantic. So they issued a storm warning to Florida from Cedar Key down to Miami on September 5th.
Right.
On September 6th, they issued a hurricane warning for the coast from Cedar Key to Savannah, Georgia, while storm warnings were displayed from Charleston, South Carolina to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, as well as from Pensacola to New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Cuban forecasters were adamantly disagreeing with the Americans, saying the hurricane would continue west. One forecaster predicted the hurricane would continue into central Texas near San Antonio.
Which is where the path ended up.
Obviously, the Cuban forecasters were correct.
Right.
Father Reese Grangorite, who is the director of the Belen College Observatory in Havana, Cuba, made notes about the hurricane starting September 1st.
So he knew it was going to happen.
He was watching it. He was the director. At this point, at this time, the Belen College Observatory was one of the most advanced meteorologist places in the world.
Okay.
So, like, he is head of this department. He is on top of everything. And he's making notes of how he observed a large persistent halo around the moon while the sky turned a deep red and cirrus clouds moving northward when the storm emerged into the Straits of Florida. This told him that the storm had intensified and that the prevailing winds were pushing the storm towards the coast of Texas, because he didn't become the director without knowing his shit.
Right.
Like, constantly studying, constantly being on top of new information and everything. So, like, he's like, this is going towards Texas, guys.
Right.
He reached out to the U.S. Weather Bureau to warn them.
Let me guess, they told him to kick rocks.
No.
So,
little side note, the National Weather Service became the U.S. Weather Bureau's name in 1970, while it was originally created in 1890. So 10 years before this storm.
Uh-huh.
The dumbass director, Willis Moore, had implemented a stupid-ass policy to block telegraph reports from Cuban meteorologists at one of the most advanced meteorological institutions in the world at the time, all because of tensions in the aftermath of the Spanish-American War.
You've got to be fucking kidding me.
No.
Oh my God.
He also changed protocol to force local Weather Bureau offices to seek authorization from the central office in DC before issuing storm warnings, which is stupid as fuck.
Ma'am!
Like,
that's how people die. Was his name
exactly,
Carl?
because by the time it gets to DC and they debate about it and then send it back, people have died.
People have died. It's already death. That's how people die, Carl.
So in Galveston, morning of September 8th, the Gulf's swells persisted despite only partly cloudy skies, which this is should have been a start of a red flag.
Right.
Because, only partly cloudy skies, but we're getting some large swells. This isn't normal.
Right.
Largely because of the unremarkable weather, a few of the residents saw reason for concern. Those that did evacuated across the bridges to the mainland, and the majority of the population was unconcerned by the rain clouds that had begun to roll in by mid-morning.
Ma'am, no!
So, and according to Isaac Klein's memoirs, he personally traveled by horse along the beach and other low-lying areas to warn the residents of the storm's approach. But by that point, it was too late for the residents to fully evacuate because storm surge.
It's like the British are coming, That's
pretty much.
It's already done. Like, the damage is already completed.
That ship's done sailed, guys.
Right.
These accounts by Isaac and his brother, who is Galveston's meteorologist Joseph L. Klein, have been in dispute ever since. Because, of course, even though Isaac is credited with issuing a hurricane warning without permission from the head's office, author Eric Larson points to Isaac's earlier insistence that a seawall was unnecessary and his notion about the island not being hit by an intense hurricane, with Isaac even considering it being an absurd delusion to believe otherwise. According to Eric Larson, no other survivors are known to have corroborated with Isaac's accounts. So, September 8th, the estimated winds were of 140 miles per hour, which is 225 kilometers per hour at landfall. Portions of South Florida received tropical storm force winds, leaving considerable damage in the Palm Beach area. There were many small boats that were torn from their moorings and capsized, and the pier was washed away, and docks and several seawalls were damaged. There was lots of storm surges and damages just from the surges, and this was September 8th.
Okay, so that was like right there.
Right, so like parts of South Florida, like as, she's coming through the Gulf, South Florida is receiving all of this shit. Like all of these storm surges and all of this wind.
So I don't see, listen, it's the white men that are stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But the women and children end up dying because of it. Nearly all of the damage that occurred in the U.S. was located in Texas. Much of the damage was obviously located in Galveston.
Right.
Although many communities outside of Galveston received serious damage, many casualties, and affected many families economically, with several cities reporting near or complete loss of all buildings or homes.
It could have
other
been
areas
completely avoided.
The damages still would have happened, but
right.
There wouldn't have been so many deaths if they had actually heeded
the warnings
coming out of Cuba, where they Cuba just got hit with this storm, so why are we not listening to them?
Also, side note,
things have changed since then.
Did you know that Gordon Ramsay was just in Galveston?
Oh, I did not.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Yay, Gordon Ramsay. Okay. Keep going.
So, in other areas, at least $3 million in damage happened to cotton crops, $75,000 to telegraph and telephone poles, and $60,000 to railroads.
Holy shit!
In the town of Alvin, 8.05 inches, which is 204 millimeters, of rain fell on September 8th, the highest 24-hour total for that city in the month of September. The city suffered 9 fatalities and about $50,000 in damage.
Holy crap!
In West Columbia, the storm destroyed the old Capitol building of the former Republic of Texas. 8 deaths occurred in that city. In Quintana, the city experienced extensive damage during the storm and a flood in 1899, causing portions of the community to be abandoned. Throughout Brazoria County alone, the hurricane caused nearly $200,000 in damages and 47 deaths.
Jesus.
Houston also experienced significant damage because it's north of Galveston.
Right.
The hurricane brought damage to many buildings, including a Masonic temple, a railroad powerhouse, an opera house, a courthouse, and many businesses, churches, homes, hotels, and school buildings. Streets were littered with branches from shade trees and downed power lines, leaving several roads completely impassable to vehicles. The city of Houston suffered about $250,000 in damages and 2 deaths, one of which occurred when a man was struck by falling timber.
Timber.
By falling timber.
Lumber timber.
Yes.
Yes.
My brain saw timber and went lumber and just combined it with so
That's okay. That is my Spanish English brain doing the same thing. That. Yeah, I feel that.
So there was a train that was headed for Galveston that left Houston on the morning of September 8th at 9:45 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Mm-hmm.
It found the tracks washed out, and passengers were forced to transfer to a relief train on parallel tracks to complete their journey. Even then, debris on the track slowed the train's progress to a crawl. The 95 travelers on the train from Beaumont found themselves at the Bolivar Peninsula, waiting for the ferry that would carry them to the island. When it arrived, the high seas forced the ferry captain to give up on his attempt to dock. The train crew attempted to return the way they had come, but rising water blocked the train's path.
Of course it did.
10 refugees from the Beaumont train sought shelter at the Point Bolivar lighthouse with 190 residents of Port Bolivar who were already there. The 85 who stayed with the train died when the storm surge overran the tops of the cars, while every person inside the lighthouse survived.
You're telling me that dumbasses stayed on the train?
Yes. 85 people stayed on the train.
Those poor people. I am calling them dumbasses, though, because
they could have gone to the lighthouse with the other 10.
Right. Good God. They were probably like rich society. High snobbery people. Nothing's going to happen to us. It's like the Titanic all over again.
Right. First news from Galveston had just reached... First news from Galveston just reached by train that could get no closer to the bay shore than 6 miles, 9.7 kilometers, where the prairie was strewn with debris and dead bodies. About 200 corpses counted from the train. A large steamship was stranded at 2 miles, which is 3.2 kilometers inland. Mm-hmm. Nothing could be seen of Galveston. Loss of life and property undoubtedly most appalling. Weather clear and bright here with gentle southeast wind. That was from G.L. Vagon, who is the manager of Western Union in Houston. He wrote this in a telegraph to the chief of the U.S. Weather Bureau on the day after the hurricane, September 9th, 1900.
You've got to be shitting me.
Mm-mm.
I hate people like that.
Huh? Me too. So, at the time of the storm, the highest point in the city of Galveston was only 8.7 feet, 2.7 meters above sea level. Not very high.
No, not at all.
The storm surge was over 15 feet, which is 4.6 meters.
Jesus.
So it washed over the whole island. Surge and tides began flooding Galveston in the early morning hours of September 8th. Water rose steadily from 3 p.m. Central Time until approximately 7:30 p.m. Central Time on September 9th, when eyewitness accounts indicated that water rose about 4 feet, 1.2 meters, in just 4 seconds. Which is, that's fucking fast.
How many?
4 feet in 4 seconds.
Jesus Christ.
An additional 5 feet, 1.5 meters of water had flowed into portions of the city by 8:30 p.m. September 9th. The cyclone dropped 9 inches, 230 millimeters of precipitation in Galveston on September 8th, setting a record on the most rainfall for any 24-hour period in the month of September in the city's history. The highest measured wind speed was 100 miles per hour, 160 kilometers per hour, just after 6:15 p.m. on September 8th. But the Weather Bureau's anemometer was blown off the building shortly after that measurement was recorded. So obviously, it was a lot faster.
Right!
But that was the last recording, was 100 miles per hour.
That's not sunny skies.
No. They since then, they make sure their meters are extremely well strapped to places. The one in Mexico Beach was, they had attached it to a pier, and pier was destroyed, but because now they're waterproof,
right,
it was found, several, miles inland.
Yeah,
but they were still able to get the data from it.
That's kind of like the tornado readers.
Yeah.
Which people are like, oh, people don't actually do that. There are storm chasers.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right.
I don't know how they have health and life insurance, let alone vehicle insurance policies, but they do.
Let me tell you.
They're probably very well compensated.
Probably. And I mean, if you guys want to learn more about those, there's tornado chasers and hurricane chasers. They are on a post on Reddit.
So the Weather Channel had somebody that was actually in Mexico Beach, and Jim Cantori, who was in Panama City Beach, sent his crew to go get those people out of Mexico Beach right before landfall.
Stop! That is so cool.
If he hadn't have done that, they would have died.
I mean, probably more than likely.
Oh, no, there was 100%. They would have died because the house that they were staying in was gone.
Oh,
all it was left was foundation.
Oh my God.
Like, there was like at least 15-foot storm surge.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just what was recorded.
Right.
Before it got tossed. Like, they would have died. There were storm chasers that actually were out at Tyndall. And they thought they were going to die.
Oh, wow.
As they were watching the buildings just get destroyed around them. Like, their vehicle was a complete loss. Like, all the windows were busted. The car was not drivable afterwards.
Well, obviously, if
yeah, like, they ended up, during the eye, they ended up having to break into one of the buildings that was still surviving, just so that way they could have some cover, because their car was not an option anymore.
Right.
Like, I can't watch the footage just because I lived through it.
Right.
You were telling me. I watched it once. Yeah. I watched it once, and that was it. I was like, nope, I'm done. So anytime like they bring it up on the Weather Channel, or like any like,
you just skip it.
Like, I just change the channel. I just mute it and just walk away for a few minutes and then come back, because
you can just
been
call
there,
me.
done that. Don't need to relive it, guys.
You can just call me. We'll talk about serial killers.
Yeah. Uh, so contemporaneous estimations place the maximum sustained wind speed at 120 miles per hour, which is 190 kilometers.
Okay.
However, survivors report observing bricks, slate, timbers, and other heavy objects becoming airborne, indicating that the winds were likely stronger. Later
Shit.
estimates place the hurricane at the higher Category 4 classifications on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The lowest recorded barometric pressure was 964.4. I'm just going to say MBAR because I don't know exactly what it stands for, but
Mm-hmm.
um,
It's a unit
measure
of
of
measurement.
pressure.
Yeah.
Yes, which is 28.48 in HG, which is another usual measurement. Um, but this was subsequently adjusted to the storm's official lowest measured central pressure of about 936 mbar, which is 27.6 in HG. Few streets in the city escaped wind damage, and all streets suffered water damage, with much of the destruction caused by storm surge, obviously.
Obviously.
All the bridges connecting the island to the mainland were washed away, while
No, really?
approximately while approximately 15 miles, 24 kilometers of railroad track was destroyed.
There was railroad
The
track going
winds
to the.
to the island, yeah.
Okay.
But even like on the coast of it, it got destroyed. 15 miles.
I believe it.
Winds and storm surge also downed electrical, telegraph, and telephone wires. The surge swept buildings off of their foundations and dismantled them. Many
Shit.
buildings and homes destroyed other structures after being pushed into them by the waves, which even demolished structures built to withstand hurricanes.
Oh my god.
Every home in Galveston suffered damage, with 3,636 homes destroyed. Approximately 10,000 people in the city were left homeless out of a total population of nearly 38,000.
Jesus.
Yeah. Portrait and landscape artist Werner Moore White, who moved from Galveston the day before the hurricane, and he survived because he moved the day before the hurricane.
Right.
Unfortunately, had his studio and much of his portfolio destroyed.
Say it again because
Sorry. Portrait and landscape artist Werner Moore White, who moved from Galveston the day before the hurricane and survived because obviously
he moved
the day before.
right.
Unfortunately, had his studio and much of his portfolio destroyed because he had left it on the island. Yes. The Tremont Hotel, where hundreds of people sought refuge during the storm, was severely damaged.
Yep.
All public buildings also suffered damage, including City Hall, which was completely de-roofed. It was just scalped. A hospital, a city gas works, a city water works, and the custom house, which is where, they bring the stuff from the port. They bring it into the house, the customs house.
The customs house, yeah.
To make sure that, it's
everything
good to be brought in
on
and
the manifest.
Everybody, the taxes are paid and everything. The Grand Opera House also sustained extensive damage, but was quickly rebuilt because it was the Opera House.
Right.
3 schools and St. Mary's University were nearly destroyed.
Oh.
This is where it gets a little sad.
Oh, no.
Not this next part. Many places of worship in the city also received severe damage or were completely demolished. Of the 39 churches in Galveston, 25 experienced complete destruction, while the others received some degree of damage.
Okay.
This is the sad part.
Oh, no.
During the storm, the St. Mary's Orphans Asylum, owned by the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word, was occupied by 93 children and 10 sisters.
We talked about that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. As tides began approaching the property, the sisters moved the children into the girls' dorm as it was newer and sturdier. Makes sense.
Right.
Realizing they were under threat, the sisters had the children repeatedly singing Queen of the Waves to calm them. As the collapse of the building became imminent, the sisters used a clothesline to tie themselves to 6 to 8 children. Basically, they divided them up between themselves.
Oh, no.
The building eventually collapsed. Only 3 of the children and none of the sisters survived. The few buildings that survived, mostly solidly built mansions or houses along the Strand Street, are today maintained as tourist attractions. The only reason why Strand Street survived is because it's built further inland on the island.
Right.
And so because everything before them caught all of the damage is the only reason why the Strand survived.
Right.
Early property damage estimates were placed at $25 million. However, itemized estimates from 1901, based on assessments conducted by the Galveston News, the Galveston Chamber of Commerce, a relief committee, and multiple insurance companies, indicated that the storm caused just over $17 million in damage throughout Galveston, including about $8.44 million in residential properties, $500,000 to churches, $656,000 to wharves and shipping properties. That word always throws me. $580,000 to manufacturing plants, $397,000 to mercantile properties, $1.4 million to store merchandise, $670,000 to railroads, telegraph, and telephone services, $416,000 to products and shipment, $336,000 to municipality properties, $243,000 to county properties, and $3.16 million to United States government properties.
Ooh.
The total also included $115,000 in damage to schools and approximately $100,000 in damage to roads.
Damn.
Yeah, so a lot.
A lot.
The area of destruction, which is an area in which nothing remained standing after the storm, consisted of approximately 1,900 acres, which is 768.9 hectares.
That's a lot.
Yeah, of land, and was arc-shaped with complete demolition of structures in the west, south, and eastern portions of the city, while the north-central section of the city suffered the least amount of damage.
Jeez.
In the immediate aftermath of the storm, a 3-mile, 4.8-kilometer long, 30 feet, 9.1 millimeter or meter wall of debris was situated in the middle of the island. As severe as the damage to the city buildings was, the death toll was even greater.
Right.
Because of the destruction of the bridges to the mainland and the telegraph lines, no word of the city's destruction was able to reach the mainland at first. On the morning of September 9th, one of the few ships at the Galveston wharf to survive the storm, the Farabee, set sail and arrived in Texas City on the western side of Galveston Bay with a group of messengers from the city. When they reached a telegraph office in Houston early on September 10th, a short message was sent to Texas Governor Joseph D. Sayers and the U.S. President William McKinley. I have been deputized by the mayor and the Citizens Committee of Galveston to inform you that the city of Galveston is in ruins.
Damn.
The messengers reported an estimated 500 dead. And this was initially considered to be an exaggeration because they didn't know.
Right.
The citizens of Houston knew a powerful storm had blown through and had prepared to provide assistance. So workers set out by rail and ship for the island almost immediately.
Oh, good.
I love you. Rescuers arrived to find the city completely destroyed.
That's not good.
It is believed 8,000 people, about 20% of the island's population, had lost their lives.
Oh my God.
Most had drowned or had been crushed as the waves pounded the debris that had been their homes hours earlier. A number of fatalities also occurred after strong winds turned debris into projectiles. Many survived the storm itself, but died after several days being trapped under the wreckage of the city, with rescuers unable to reach them. The rescuers could hear the screams of the survivors as they walked on the debris trying to rescue those they could. More people were killed in this single storm than the total of those killed in at least the next two deadliest tropical cyclones that struck the U.S. since. It remains the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history. The disaster did not even spare the buried dead. A number of the coffins, including reportedly that of actor playwright Charles Francis Coughlin, who had died in Galveston the previous year, were washed out of the local cemetery to sea by the tidal storm.
Stop. No.
The city of the city of Galveston was effectively obliterated. With the city in ruins and railroads to the mainland destroyed, the survivors had little to live on until the relief arrived. On September 9th, Galveston city officials established the Central Relief Committee for Galveston Storm Sufferers, the CRC,
Mm-hmm.
chaired by Mayor Walter C. Jones. The CRC was composed of subcommittees with specific aspects of relief efforts, including burial of the deceased, correspondence, distribution of food and water, finances, hospitalization, and rehabilitation for the injured, and public safety. The dead bodies were so numerous that burying all of them was impossible. Initially, bodies were collected by dead gangs and then given to 50 African American men who were forcibly recruited at gunpoint to load them onto a barge.
I am what?
Yeah.
I am disgusted.
Oh, trust me.
Not by the dead bodies, but by the force of.
Yes. About 700 bodies were taken out to sea to be dumped. Dumped. However, after Gulf currents washed many of the bodies back onto the beach, a new solution was needed.
Of course.
Well, no fucking shit. The sea don't want the dead. She just caused it.
Right.
Funeral pyres were set up on the beaches or wherever dead bodies were found and burned day and night for several weeks after the storm. The authorities passed out free whiskey to sustain the distraught men conscripted for the gruesome work of collecting and burning the dead. With thousands dead and roughly 2,000 survivors leaving the city and never returning, according to a Morrison and For My Company survey, Galveston initially experienced a significant population decline. Obviously. Between 1907 and 1914, Congregation B'nai Israel Rabbi Henry Cohen and philanthropist Jacob Scrift spearheaded the Galveston movement. Cohen, Scrift, and others created the movement to draw Jewish immigrants away from the crowded area along the East Coast and toward cities farther west, such as Galveston, because they're wanting to repopulate.
Mm-hmm.
Although approximately 10,000 Jewish immigrants arrived in Galveston during this period, few settled in the city or the island, but about 1/4 of them remained in Texas. The 1910 census reported a population of 36,891 people in Galveston. Although it declined from the 1900 census, the population loss of thousands of people was nearly reversed.
Right.
Survivors set up temporary shelters and surplus United States Army tents along the shore. They were so numerous that observers began referring to Galveston as the White City on the Beach because the tents were white.
Right.
Not because, people in the tents were white, but they
I
probably
mean,
also were.
both?
But
Both. I'm
really
thinking
both.
both.
Let's go both. In the first 2 weeks following the storm, approximately 17,000 people resided in these tents, vacant storerooms, or public buildings because you stayed where what was still
What you
there.
had. Right.
Others constructed so-called storm lumber homes using salvageable material from the debris to build shelter, which also makes sense.
Right.
You use what you got.
Swiss
The building
Family Robinson. Sorry.
Right. The building committee, with a budget of $450,000, opened applications for money to rebuild and repair homes. Accepted applicants were given enough money to build a cottage with 3 12 by 12 foot, which is 3.7 by 3.7 meter rooms. So, fairly decent sized
Fairly
rooms.
decent sized.
By March 1901, 1,073 cottages were built and 1,109 homes had been repaired. So, a large chunk within,
A pretty
like 6
decent
months?
time. Yeah.
October, November, December, February, March. Yeah, 6 months.
Yeah.
Yes, I just counted on my fingers.
Mine are currently sewing, which is why if you guys
fine.
hear like little taps in the background, that's me trying to get the blood flow back in my fucking fingertips.
Right. So in 6 months, they got a bunch of homes done.
Right.
Winifred Bonfils, a young journalist working for William Randolph Hearst. Does that name sound familiar? I believe he covered the Titanic.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, because 1900,
Right.
She was the first reporter on the line at the Hurricane's ground zero in Galveston.
Uh-huh.
She delivered an exclusive set of reports, and Hearst sent relief supplies by train.
Oh.
Yeah, so the fact that she was a female young journalist in 1900, that's awesome.
Right, but she was one of the very few. Hearst did employ, I think it was like 4 or 5 female journalists.
Yes.
But he was one of the few
that did. Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of people
love it.
I hated the fact that he was a philanthropist when it came to women.
Yeah,
but
he
love
gave
what he
them
did.
He was putting cracks in that glass ceiling for them.
Right.
By September 12th, Galveston received its first post-storm mail. The next day, basic water service was restored, and Western Union began providing minimal telegraph service.
Oh.
And then within 3 weeks of the storm, cotton was again being shipped out of the port.
Okay.
So they were working extremely hard to get things back up and running.
Because the closest thing to normality is the shipping.
Right. So this is a quote from Clara Barton.
Okay.
Who is the founder of the American Red Cross after viewing the destruction in Galveston. She said, "It was one of the most monstrosities of nature, which defied exaggeration and fiendishly laughed at all the tame attempts of words to picture the scene it had prepared. The churches, the great business houses, the elegant residence of the cultured and opulent, the modest little homes of laborers of a city of nearly 40,000 people, the center of foreign shipping and railroad traffic lay in splinters and debris piled 20 feet above the surface, and the crushed bodies, dead and dying, of nearly 10,000 of its citizens lay underneath them."
Oh my God.
So Barton is famous for her responses to crises in the latter half of the 19th century, and she responded to the disaster and visited Galveston with a team of 8 Red Cross workers.
At that time, that was a lot of people.
Well, and so at this point, she was 78.
Right.
And so this was the last disaster that she herself would respond to.
Oh, wow.
And she would retire in 1904. I mean, think about it. Um, doing, she was, working as a nurse during the Civil War.
Right. She had been around.
I,
She had seen a few.
yeah, she'd been she'd been around for a good chunk of time. So after she and her team observed the catastrophe, the Red Cross set up a temporary headquarters at a 4-story warehouse in the commercial district. Her presence in Galveston and appeals for contributions resulted in a substantial amount of donations.
Good.
Overall, 258 barrels, 1,552 pillowcases, and 13 casks of bedding, clothing, crockery, disinfectants, groceries, hardware, medical supplies, and shoes were received at the warehouse, while $17,341 in cash was donated to the Red Cross Contributions, both monetary gifts and supplies, were estimated to have reached about $120,000.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so like she raised up a lot.
Right.
Which, especially considering 1900s money, that was significant.
That's like Daddy Warbucks money.
Right. To prevent future storms from causing destructions like that of the 1900 hurricane, many improvements to the island was made. The city of Galveston hired a team of 3 engineers to design structures for protection from future storms. The engineers were Alfred Noble, Henry Martin Robert, and H.C. Ripley.
Okay.
The 3 engineers recommended and designed a seawall. Fucking finally.
Serious.
In November of 1902, so 2 years later, the residents of Galveston overwhelmingly approved a bond referendum to fund building a seawall, passing the measure by a vote of 3,085 to 23. It should have been 0, but 21. 21. The first 3 miles, 4.8 kilometers of the Galveston seawall, 17 feet, 5.2 meters high, were built beginning in 1902 under the direction of Henry Martin Robert.
Right.
In July of 1904, the first segment was completed, though construction of the seawall continued for several decades, with the final segment finished in 1963.
That is a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they're building it 17 feet high.
Right, okay.
Along the whole Galveston.
Okay, that's...
So, like, it was a large project to do.
Right.
Upon completion, the seawall in its entirety stretched for more than 10 miles, which is 16 kilometers.
Okay. So
that's... it was...
I would understand
a huge thing.
I understand now why
very tall and very long.
Yes, that's what she said.
Another dramatic effort to protect Galveston was its raising. They lifted it up.
Okay.
Which was also recommended by the 3 engineers, and similar to the earlier rising of Chicago and Sacramento, California.
Yep.
Approximately 15 million cubic yards, which is 11 million meters squared, of sand was dredged from the Galveston shipping channel to raise the city, some sections as much as 17 feet.
Damn!
Which is 5.2 meters.
Right.
Over 2,100 buildings were raised in the process of pumping sand underneath, including the 3,000 ST, which is 2,700 tons. I guess semi-tons.
Okay.
St. Patrick's Church. According to historian David G. McComb, the grade of about 500 blocks had been raised by 1911.
Mm-hmm.
The seawall was listed among the National Register of Historic Places on August 18th, 1977, while the seawall and raising of the island was jointly named a National Historical civil engineering landmark by the American Society of Civil Engineers on October 11th, 2001. Oh, that was a mouthful.
Right.
In 1915, a storm similar in strength and track to the 1900 hurricane struck Galveston. 15 years later, happened again. The 1915 storm brought storm surge up to 12 feet, 3.7 meters, testing the integrity of the new seawall. Well, the portions that they had done at that point. Although 53 people on Galveston Island lost their lives in the 1915 storm, this was a great reduction from the thousands who had died 15 years earlier.
That's.
But also, by this point, they were probably heeding the warnings coming out of Cuba. So
right. They're probably listening to Cuba now.
Right.
Going, you know.
Other powerful tropical cyclones would test the effectiveness of the seawall, including Hurricane Carla in 1961, Hurricane Alicia in 1983, and Hurricane Ike in 2008. Hurricane Carla primarily caused severe coastal flood-related damages to structures unprotected by the seawall because it wasn't completed yet.
Right. After Hurricane Ike, it should have been Hurricane Tina. To be honest. Because Ike and Tina Turner?
Oh.
You didn't get it. You were so slow to the party, my dude.
I was like, huh? So following Hurricane Alicia, the Corps of Engineers estimated that the seawall prevented about $100 million in damage.
That's amazing.
But despite the seawall, Ike left extensive destruction in Galveston due to storm surge, with preliminary estimates indicating that up to $2 billion in damage occurred to beaches, dwellings, hospitals, infrastructure, and ports.
Well, because it's a storm. No.
Yeah. So the damage in Galveston and surrounding areas prompted proposals for improvement to the seawall, including the addition of floodgates and more seawalls. Which makes sense.
Right. I heard you like seawalls, so I gave you more seawalls.
Right. To commemorate the hurricane's 100th anniversary in 2000, the 1900 Storm Committee was established and began meeting in January of 1998. Because they're thinking ahead.
Right.
The committee and then mayor of Galveston, Roger Quiroga, planned several public events in remembrance of the storm, including theatrical plays, which I don't know why you're doing plays about this storm.
Right.
But okay. An educational fundraising luncheon. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
A candlelight memorial service also makes sense. A 5K run, because we're trying to get people to do things.
I guess.
The rededication of a commemorative Clara Barton plaque. I mean, that makes sense. She raised a lot. She brought a lot of stuff. And the dedication of the Place of Remembrance monument. Obviously, that makes sense.
Obviously.
At the dedication of the Place of Remembrance monument, the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word sang Queen of the Waves and placed 10 roses and 90 other flowers around the monument to commemorate the 10 nuns and 90 children who perished after the hurricane destroyed the orphans asylum.
That's so sad.
Right. Speakers at the candlelight memorial service included U.S. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson, who was born in Galveston, Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, D. James Baker, and CBS Evening News anchor Dan Rather, who gained fame for his coverage during Hurricane Carla in 1961. The Daily News published a special 100th anniversary commemorative edition paper on September 3rd, 2000. The last reported survivor of the Galveston Hurricane of 1900, Maud Connick of Wharton, Texas, died November 14th, 2004, at the claimed age of 116. Although the 1900 census and other records indicate she was about 10 years younger than that. But still, that would have made her 106.
That's still impressive.
That's still so impressive.
So
She saw
impressive.
so much over her life.
Right.
She saw 2 world wars, um, Vietnam, Korea,
The what is it? The suffragettes?
the suffrage. Like, she saw so much
Women's
over the course of her life.
women's rights. I mean,
Like, whether or not, she was 116 or 106, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
She still saw so much history over her life.
Right.
Also, all of us have seen so much history over the course of her life, and we hate it.
We don't like it.
I can only imagine how much she hated watching all this history unfurl.
She was probably like my great aunt, who's just like, I can stand people, but I don't like them.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last little bit that I have is the Galveston Historical Foundation maintains the Texas Seaport Museum at Pier 21 in the port of Galveston.
Cool.
Included in the museum is a documentary titled The Great Storm that gives a recounting of the 1900 hurricane.
It's cool, but not cool. You know what I mean?
Right. So the plaque that is placed on buildings in Galveston to indicate which structure survived, it basically says, in little print above it is 2000, which is when it was for the 100-year.
Okay.
It says 1900 survivor storm, and then underneath it says 1900.
Okay.
And so these are these metal plaques that are mounted onto these buildings.
Are the plaques that
strand,
are commemorating?
And so it's pretty cool. But yeah, like, so much happened that could have been avoided with this storm, and I hated every single second of it.
Researching it?
Yes, because like I knew a lot of it,
right?
But I still hated it the more I learned.
I mean, the more I learned,
the more I hated it.
Right. I don't like natural disasters. And I mean, coming from California, it's Dante's Inferno. It's 7 layers of natural disasters. And when I worked for the CDC, like I volunteered for them, they said if you are prepared for a zombie apocalypse, you're literally prepared for any natural disaster. And I mean, it's become like a funny game between me and my husband because I was like, all right, where are the exits? And, he actually sits down before us and, he'll look at everything around us and like kind of give it a once over and all that other crap. And I'm just sitting here, la da 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 da, being me.
Kind of going along with things.
Right. And, I'm in my healing girl era, so I kind of love this shit because it's like I don't have to worry. Here's my husband. He's going to do the worrying for me.
Right.
But of course, as always,
Sylvia was with Milton. She was extremely anxious, and then finally, like right before Milton showed up, her fiance was like, okay, now I'm going to be anxious. She's like, no, sir.
You are not.
Afterwards, I am doing enough for both of us.
Yes. I love your sister because she gives like some sort of like comedic standings for it, and it kind of makes me laugh.
Because we find humor in everything, because if we don't find dark humor, we're not going to survive.
No, definitely not. And I did finally get asked why I'm even doing this podcast. And
really?
And I had to have that polite conversation of, well, considering the fact that I didn't get to get my justice, and my friend, who's still missing, is not able to get her justice, I want to be able to get justice and research justice for these people. And, just know that there's always going to be one autistic ADHD person sitting on the other end of that keyboard wanting to delve deep into these subjects that other people don't want to touch. Congratulations.
Right.
Welcome to the fold. You're here with us, possums.
Yeah, but that's why Houston is Galveston is haunted as fuck
Oh, yeah.
because a lot of the bodies were never found.
They weren't. They weren't. And,
Because either being washed away or just completely buried.
I don't think, hold on, honey, did we go to Galveston?
I don't think you've gone to Galveston.
I don't think so either. Can we never go to Galveston?
I mean, it's very pretty.
No, I don't want to go.
Is brown though, because the
Texas Galveston.
Like, there's another Galveston.
Florida.
Florida doesn't have a Galveston.
Florida has a Galveston.
I don't think so.
Sissy says, I don't think there's a Florida Galveston.
Nope.
Who knows?
The only Galveston is in Texas.
The only Galveston is in Texas, babe. He says, my bad. So,
I was like, I know this.
I hated today.
I did too.
I loved the information. I loved knowing about the nuns, who have feet.
Yes.
Fucking nuns.
And they tried their best to
keep the
children safe. But if they had been able to, they most likely would have evacuated the island.
Right.
But so much wasn't known until it was too late.
Right. And I mean, like, if there's like any sort of of course there's always going to be natural disasters that we're not going to be prepared for, but there's some really simple ones like okay, I can give a few. When there
Did you blank there for a second?
Yes, I did. When there is no heat, and let's say you're in a pretty small area and you're not able to get out, which, you know, I was at a point where either if I wouldn't have evacuated, I probably wouldn't be alive.
Right.
But if you're able to get out, right? Number one. Number two, if you are unable to get out, and let's say it's cold and you have no way to have heat, if you have terracotta pots.
Yes.
What you do is you take a terracotta pot, you put some tea lights underneath, and it actually heats the area. Another thing is tents and putting a tarp over it or aluminum foil underneath. Like the, what is it? The fire quilts?
Yes.
Okay. What's another one? Water. Fill your washing machine with ice.
As it does self-drain.
It does self-drain.
Fill bathtubs if
necessary.
If you have them, because some homes don't.
Right.
You can use it for flushing water for toilets.
Right.
If not, you can always use it for, you know, washing your hands and, you know, other things.
And then my favorite one, which, you know, everybody always thought it was weird, baby wipes.
Yes.
Baby wipes are fantastic.
They are, specifically, especially if you're without running water. My family called them whore baths. Basically, boobs, pits, crotch. That's it.
Yeah. Necessary.
Sweat the most. That's it.
Necessary.
Because they do leave a film on you because they do have a detergent in them. And so doing full body baths with them is highly not recommended because you start feeling even grosser after a while because it's just layering on.
I mean, my husband was in the field for almost 3 weeks, you know, and I gave him 65 wipes. I gave him 2 containers, but he only took 1, which is fine. Now I know for future reference to take 2.
Yes.
We
lived and learned.
We lived and learned. But as long as you're prepared for the zombie apocalypse, there is a guy on YouTube who actually walks you through bug out bags, and
Right.
and prepping for the zombie apocalypse.
Always having one packed, especially
Right.
during specific seasons like
Right.
hurricane season. When having when it's or more common for
Right.
your area to have wildfires or
Hmm.
tornadoes.
We call them storm
Always having a
seasons. Yeah.
yeah, always having a bag packed and go with all of your important warrant
Documents.
documents,
Hmm.
um, things that are not replaceable. But
Right.
at the end of the day, guys, material things are replaceable.
And I mean, I had,
Humans are not.
right, I had this huge discussion with, um, right after the fires had happened and I lost everything.
Yeah.
That I had a storage unit that was in the coffee park area and it
Mm-hmm.
just,
It didn't survive.
no, I lost a lot of vinyls. One of them I am very sad that I lost was a 1996 signed vinyl from Michael Jackson, which was still in the wrapper.
Yeah.
I wanted to sell that when he died, so that way I can pay off my debt.
Eh,
Main reason why I was sad. But I had my grandparents had a recorder that I had gotten fixed,
yeah.
and it was not the flute, but the record player.
Right.
Everything was demolished, and I remember my neighbor going, "Why are you getting just stuff for free? Like, don't you want to look?" And I was like, "It's just stuff. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care." Um, I was able to save one cast iron skillet,
Mm-hmm.
one cast iron pan,
Yeah.
a bunch of pictures my mom found copies of. So she made
Oh
copies
god.
of those. So I have a picture of my grandfather and my father on my
Mm-hmm.
wall. That's a copy. Um,
Yeah.
she has the original, but I mean, a lot of stuff.
It is replaceable.
It is replaceable. It is stuff.
Like you are 100%.
Yes,
Um, you're okay to it is okay to be upset about the loss of the
absolutely,
items.
absolutely,
100%.
100%.
Because when our roof went off, we lost all of our family videos because they were in the upper part of
Right,
our 2-story house. We lost all of our family videos on VHSs. We lost a bunch of family photos because when the roof went, a side of the wall went and it dumped out a lot of our family photos that hadn't been put into albums yet that my
right.
mom had in Rubbermaid boxes.
Hmm.
But when they knocked it, some of the lids came off and the pictures scattered with the wind. So
Oh,
we've lost a lot of pictures because of that. Some of them were just destroyed because of water damage.
hmm.
We lost, some heirlooms from my dad's side of the family from his parents that aren't technically replaceable because they don't exist. They were like one of a kind thing.
Right,
But the things that were recoverable, they're even more precious.
right. And I mean,
But at the end of the day, guys, like my dad and I discussed this, is that yes, we are sad about the loss of the items, but at the end of the day, I walked out of that house unscathed.
yes, you
Physically
are.
unscathed. Mentally, I'm
Mentally,
fucked up.
right. We're still
Mentally,
working
I'm
through
very
that.
much fucked up.
I mean, did
That is
did
a work in progress.
did doing
But
this research kind of help you?
it did a little bit.
Okay.
But at the same time, it did, bring up the PTSD because I was, doing it while watching, Helene and Milton, and so it was just it was a big thing.
Right.
But like Dad and I discussed, it was at the end of the day, the most important thing out of that house
Was you?
survived, and
Right.
that was me.
I swear to
And
God, I would have brought you back from the dead, bitch. I don't care. I'm
bitch,
not doing this world.
I would have been up in your house just bugging you 24 hours a day. Just sitting on
I
the
know.
couch, just hanging out.
What
You
you
wouldn't be
doing
able to
now?
get rid of me. I mean, you can't now, so.
I mean, seriously, I wouldn't have it any other way. But
But I honestly think that if I hadn't have survived, my mom would probably be
She would be
in the nut house right now.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, she already should be in the nut house, but that's besides the point.
That's besides the point. We're working. We're healing.
She would have been fully into the deep end.
Oh yeah.
She lost me, especially because I shouldn't have survived my birth to begin with. So it's she lost me, 20 something years later, she really would have went off the deep end.
But on a lighter note, I do want to talk about some good things to come out of really, really large scale things. So of course we talked about a really heavy topic today. If you guys are involved in any sort of accident, a great company, Kodak, will fix your photos for you.
Yes.
I have 2 photos here. Let's see here. Oh, I don't have them hanging up anymore. They're in the lunchbox over there. You see that little pink thing right there? So I have a lunchbox that did survive the fire. I don't know. But it did.
It's just in the right place.
But I took it to Kodak and they were amazing. And I was just like, I don't know, just if you can save it, that'd be great. And she's like, yeah, we'll see what we can do. And I remember coming back and it was a photo of my grandmother. And it was, printed out, and it was her from the tobacco festival in El Salvador. And they fixed it.
I love that photo of her.
It's beautiful. My mom has the big one, the one that we blew up.
Yeah.
But I had the little one, the little wallet one. And they fixed it. The edges were kind of crispy. But they fixed it. And they were like, hey, do you want and I was like, yes. Yeah. And I have it. It's in the lunchbox. I just don't want to
Did you keep the original?
I didn't. Because every time I looked at it, it would just kind of...
It made you sad.
It made me super sad because it was like, I lost so much, but I gained so much, Yes. If I wouldn't have gotten into that fire, I wouldn't have met Katie. I wouldn't have met you.
This is true.
I wouldn't have met the lovely Femager girls that we love. And, I wouldn't have gained a sense of family that I've always wanted.
This is true.
And, we
wouldn't be who we are today with all the chaos.
I mean, we would still be both fucked up in our own rights.
Oh, 100%. But we wouldn't be fucked up together.
Precisely. So I'm really glad for that. Today sucked.
Oh, yes, 100%.
But I'm glad I did it with you.
Glad I did it with you, too. Wouldn't have had it any other way.
I know, seriously. My husband is going to have a hard time getting me out of the house now. So, on that note, I got to go find out what we're having for dinner.
That's a good point. I'm going to go find food.
I hope you guys stay well, be well, stay feral.
Bite the hand.
Bite the hand.
Always bite the hand.
And I hope you guys had a great October. We had a great October giving it to you. And now we're back to our regularly scheduled bullshit of one episode every Friday. If you don't like that tough shit, get hit. But we'll see you guys next time.
Okay, bye.
Okay, goodbye. Next time on the Pandemonium Witches. I can say debuted, but I can't say rural.
It's the R-U-R.
Am I what? Oh, the R-U-R in rural. I'm sorry. However, for someone who never missed a single shift, even when sick, she failed to show up to work.
And nobody
noticed.
Tried to find out.
So, there's not a lot of history on Susan aside from eyewitness testimonies and conversations had with her coworkers. She was nice, she got along great with people, etc. But what is known is that she disappeared into thin air. We really don't even know for certain the circumstances of Susan's murder. These are all questions that I had that unfortunately I don't think will ever be answered.